Step one, you're going to install a Timbersled ARO. First things first, we're going to do all the easy stuff. You remove the seats, get your basic plastics off, get the gas tank loose, get the rear axle nut removed, and the upper shock nut removed. Step two, next we're going to remove this wishbone bolt and nut. 3, we're then going to take off the brake master cylinder. Get a clip back here, remove this bolt and these two, set it off to the side. 4, next we're going to remove the rear swing arm pivot bolt. 5, once the swing arm pivot bolt is removed, the swing arm is ready to come off the bike. Just grab by the tire and the shock and roll it out the back. 6, we're then going to take the other wishbone nut and bolt off, take the wishbone off the bike. 7, then going to remove this rear fender splash guard. 7, find the pivot bushings that fit your machine, put the O-rings on them, make sure to put grease on the outside and the inside, and go ahead and install them into your swing arm casting. This is how the spacers will look installed for an 18 Yamaha FX. We're now ready to install the track to the back of the bike. Go ahead and take the brake lever, route it up through middle of the frame up by the engine, and slide the track up to the motor, slide the pivot arm bolt through, and put the nut on it. 8, take your brake lever and line, route it up through this hole here, just drape it over the handlebars for now. We're now ready to bring the track kit up to the frame of the bike, put the pivot axle bolt back in. 9, you're going to install your TSS shock. Go ahead and drop it in. Use your supplied hardware. Use a tape measure to figure out what bushings in your pack fits your bike. Go ahead and use your factory top shock bolt to install it. When installing the TSS shock, you're going to use a supplied hardware, and it comes in from the bottom up to the TSS shock. After you do that, if you have a helper to push down on the back of the track, this will drop right into place and you can install the factory shock tower bolt. 10. Next we're going to install the chain. You're going to use the chain out of the Timbersled package. Go ahead and put the bike in neutral, wrap the chain around, put your master link through. Hopefully you have a nice chain tool like this one here. We're not going to worry about adjusting it now until we get it on the flat ground, and we're going to do that in a later video with proper setup and suspension and everything. 11. Now that the chain's installed, we're going to move on to the front. We're going to begin by removing the front brake lever. As long as that mount. Here, the fork protectors, the fork guards. We're also going to remove the front axle nut. Just begin by loosening these up. Take this nut out, drive that out, pull the front tire off the bike. 12, you remove these 2 bolts, take the caliper off the front of the bike. 13, on installing the ARO spindle, you're going to go ahead and put the bushings in the spindle that fits your bike. Some bikes come with a supplied axle, such as this Yamaha here. Make sure to take a tape measure to make sure you have the bushing spacers correct. Even flip it up 180, measure between, make sure everything's right. Not going to tighten it up yet. We're going to then hang the trio. We're going to take this bolt out here. We're going to remove those 4 bolts and drop the fender down. 14, you're now going to hang your trio shock. You're going to start out by taking the bracket and mounting it to the shock with this bolt. This is a Yamaha, so we've got 4 spacers that goes behind it because of this rib here on the fender. Take the bolts, bolt it up to the fender. The trio will now be hanging. So remember, you left your spindle loose. This will be swinging. You can now take your bottom of your trio shock, put it together, put the bolt through and tighten it up. 15, we're now going to install the fork clamps. Start out by putting the plastic bushing onto the fork. Inside clamp counterbore goes up. We're going to slide that on and slide it down with the nylon. Once you get that into place, your holes will be lined up. Your outer clamp goes out here. Counterbore facing up. This spacer goes to the rear. The bolts with the nuts goes to the front. Go ahead and get that assembled. 16. Now that you have everything loosely assembled, you're going to make sure that the fork clamps are slid all the way down, The nylon plastic bushing is all the way down in the counter bores. Everything is down. You're gonna go ahead, tighten up your axle nut, put the bolt on, tighten these down, go ahead and tighten everything up. 17, just final check, make sure all your bolts are tight, make sure that your gaps are even front to rear, just like if you're doing a set of handlebars. Remember that there's 2 size length bolts sent in the kit. Make sure that all your lengths are the same front to back. And now we're ready to mount the ski. 18, you're going to take your ski bushing out of your ski, put some waterproof grease on it on the outside and on the inside, slide it into the spindle, put your ski under it, put your bolt through, torque it down. 19, now that your ski is installed, next thing we're going to do is put our fork tube guards back on. They need to be trimmed out. My black ones are not here yet, and I'm not going to cut my white ones to fit because I'll run them in the summertime for the dirt. But you take your fork tube, you hold it up here, you trace out the area that needs to get cut out where the fork clamp is now. And I highly recommend this tool. Is handy. You can get it at Home Depot or Lowe's. It's cheap. It cuts through plastic like butter. A couple of the bits for a Dremel tool works awesome, and you can just the old-fashioned way, just use a pair of snips as well. But go ahead and trim that out, get your bolts back on, hold your fork tubes, then we're going to move up to the handlebars and go back to the brake lever. 20. So this year's Arrow comes with a new master cylinder in line, so on some of the bikes you won't have to go through the bleeding process. Unfortunately, with the Yamaha, in order to route this in the most optimal position, we have to remove the air intake and disconnect the brake line from the master cylinder so we can route the line on the inside of the frame, behind the intake, pop out where all the factory stuff's coming out. We're gonna go in between the fork tube and the frame, come right around up to where our master cylinder will be mounted right here. Now, if you choose, you could get away with running the line on the outside, go on the outside of the fork tube and up, but you're risking getting it torn off by a tight tree or something like that, and it's really not the right way. So we recommend doing it this way. So begin by removing an 8mm bolt here, here, and here. You're gonna come over to the other side. There's gonna be a 3mm Allen just above the hot idle circuit knob. Remove that, that's the clamp that goes to the back side of the throttle body, and pop the air intake off. 22, now that your master cylinder is installed, your brake line is back on the bike. You can see, looks factory now, right where the OEM would have placed it. When I took this apart, I did not get one drop of brake fluid out of it, and I still have a pretty tight feel, but we still need to bleed it. So you can either get a brake bleeder, go back onto the bleeder right here, use the buddy system, or you can get a vacuum bleeder and pull the air out of the system through here. Standard brake, bleeder's right here. Should take about a couple minutes to do that, so we're gonna go ahead and bleed the brakes right now. 23. If the bike's on flat ground, you can go ahead and adjust the chain. You have to loosen up these 3 bolts right here. The tensioner is this. This will push on that and go ahead and tighten your chain up. Make sure that you're on flat ground and the suspension is all the way up. Once you get that done, the kit is installed. I have to move on to you getting a Ninja backup kit ready for this thing for the show coming up. You guys know how to take it from here. Put your intake back on, your fuel can, all your plastics, your seat. You're ready to go rip it up.